Hi, this is Marcus Camenzuli, and you're listening to the Headsmack podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Headsmack podcast. My name is Paul Pavolny, and I'm excited to have another misfit with me. Marcus Camenzuli is with me, and he is a full-stack marketer to 7 to 8 figure personal brands. Welcome, Marcus. How you doing, man?
Great. It's great. It's good to be on here. Great, Paul.
Looking forward to today's conversation and learning what it means to be a full-stack marketer for personal brands. And so, Marcus, tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm a fan of superheroes, and I love hearing origin stories. And so give me a little bit of the origin story of Marcus and maybe some of the head smacks that brought you to where you're at and what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So, well, back when, that pandemic hit, that thing that when that hit, I was in sales at the time. And then I was put on pause with my job, and then I started to work from home at that job. And then later on, I decided to move on from that job because I just saw the benefits of being able to, more work flexibly and stuff. And I was always in sales for my entire life. So that's what put me into like online sales, like high ticket sales for people with expertise. They'd be selling it and to a particular audience, the whole jam. I did that.
How did you get into sales? Was that like your first job out of high school, out of college? Like how did you end up in sales?
Well, I was in college and I was bartending, and I had lost my bartending job, and then I actually had to drop school because I had to find a job because I couldn't pay my bills. And then when I dropped out of school, I was like, okay, I need to now recoup the money I lost with school to go do it again. And I was like, okay, well, bartending kind of caps up with how many people you can wow and get tips from, and it's pretty exhausting. So that's when I fell into sales. I was like, I can't do anything else. And I just took there's some people skills you get from bartending, just goes into it, right? That's how I kind of landed in that. And then I stuck with it just because, okay, this is going pretty good, and it can probably take me some places. And I was always planning to go back to school, but then I just kept going. I was like, actually, I didn't even know why I was in school, so it was like I just dropped that whole idea altogether. So
yeah. What was the sales job?
Before I was selling like medical and dental packages.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So some B2B, some B2C back then. And then it grew into like when I was in the online space, like selling to SaaS founders for like business coaching. There was also B2C markets, B2B markets, many different ones that we're all aware of. And then this whole time when I was in sales, like there was very big months, very low months. And I just was having a really hard time looking after myself. And oftentimes would be getting on the phone with people who were very cold to what we were doing. And the company was paying a lot of money for these calls. And I'm like, and I was expected to close them. And I was a superstar salesperson when I had hot leads. But if I have cold leads, I didn't even feel like I can't. This isn't even the job for me. Like I can't do this, right? And it was expected to pull. I felt like I was expected to pull like rabbits out of my hat or something, or like a magician. And I was like, and I dealt with it for a while, but it was so stressful. I was like, there has to be an easier way here. And I was always a writer. Like I would write people's essays in school for money. Saying that live, like it's because I'm past that chapter. But that I always had a knack for it, and then I got so down in the dumps and just dark because like it was getting very dark with like the whole sales thing and just being in a very rough place trying to look after myself and my family. That I then just started to write just to escape it. I was like, my self-efficacy went so down because like I felt like I couldn't do this. It's like I felt that was good 1 week, good 1 month, and then like I'm completely lost the next month. I just started to write because like I was decent at it, and I just want to feel good at something again. Right. And then it hit me like, oh yeah, these calls that I'm taking that aren't really set up properly, they are coming from emails, they're coming from ads, they're coming from sales pages, video sales letters. I'm like, well, maybe there's a hole I can fill here. And then I just took that, I hired a bunch of mentors, the best in the game that many people would know of. And just went all in on just becoming a very skilled direct response copywriter and marketing strategist. And then I was able to take that and really fix that problem. Working with sales teams that appointment setting teams who are dealing with these leads to set, and they want like hot leads. You want to make that, you want to strategically produce that, not just have it be a random thing based on probability, right? And, I've been able to take people with email lists of 40, 50,000 subscribers where they're getting maybe a handful of calls, not really monetizing. It's just kind of like a nurture mechanism, to then like monetizing upwards of 6 figures per month from them, just from, being able to set up systems that can make good hot leads with people ready to actually talk about, getting the help they need from a company, rather than just being in this exploring phase that really doesn't help anybody. Right. So
Yeah.
that's what kind of led me to hearing a lot of head smacks along the way, so.
So what were some of the head smacks that some of these mentors started sharing with you that started resetting your thinking about sales?
Or like the problem I was experiencing, or how it works, or
Yeah, with the frustration, you said you hired mentors to help you out. So what were some of the things that they started sharing with you that helped to reset some of your thinking around sales, or give you the tools that you needed to move forward?
Well, you'll have people have very, very, very different awareness levels when they come into a sales process. Some will be like, I'll use the analogy. It's very akin to like, somebody knows something stinks in their house, but they don't really know where it's coming from. Like, they know there's a problem, but they don't know if it's coming from the trash can. They don't know if it's from mold. They don't know it's from something rot, the wood rotting in their house. They don't know what it could be. And so while it seems like they have a problem and they're experiencing symptoms, they don't really know the solution, what it could be. And often that kind of person on a call in a sales process, they're showing signs that like, this could be a great lead for like to pass on to the deeper sales team, spend hours with, try to close them and do all that jazz. But it isn't really, they're not at that level yet. And you would often see it where like they're experiencing pain, but when it comes time to actually mentally accepting the solution that somebody's offering, it's still very far away, right? And then that's where a lot of email marketing comes into play, because it is a more solution aware space where you can really like bridge that gap, where they understand it. And once they understand it, what it's like, going back to like if something smells in the house, like if they know it's now like something's rotting in the wood, okay, now like they're more open to solutions that are more around that, right? It just makes it much more productive and much less baggage at the end that could have been avoided way earlier. So that was put in my head, because I always thought like, if a person's in pain, jump all over it, right? And that's what a lot of people think. But there's different flavors of that you have to really be calculated around.
Right. And so, as you started implementing some of these things that they started teaching you, how did you make that your own?
Well, because I would often, whenever I work with, say, a client, I don't just go like, hey, like, what's your product, what's your program, and this. I go very deep, because you'll have different kinds of avatars, and like you'll start to see like you have a whole like tangible market, but there's very different kinds of people in that, and like they just have different flavors of the same pain points. And when I would take that, like when often we would run, say, ads to lead magnets or low ticket products, there's a flavor of that pain or problem embedded into that they're either responding to, and we can talk around that with a lot of marketing automations and things like that. And so it just allowed me to really see more with like a developed eye, like how can we really personalize everybody's journey on the way to like actually like being ready to explore, say, like a high ticket service that costs upward of like $10,000 to $20,000, when somebody's maybe never made that kind of decision in their life, like have it actually become organically, rather than it being pushed in the sales process. And now we're kind of in push sales, not really in pull sales. And I find when you really can flip that around, people are being pulled in for the right reasons. And that does a big difference with like just the refund rates on the back end too, because people are getting because they want to and they're deciding to, but they're coming to those conclusions on their own rather than being pushed, And so I find when you just get that like level of depth, you can foster that,
Yeah. And so when it comes to, email marketing, a lot of people are like, really, email? Like, isn't email dead? We've heard people talking about email being dead.
It's dead
for a long time. So what do you tell them when they're like, is email really a relevant thing? Like, let's get into Facebook. Let's get into whatever. What do you tell them?
Well, it's funny. Email's been dying, I think, since like 2002 or something. It's just like, it's a slow, painful death.
Yeah.
But I always say like, I mean, if it were dead, you wouldn't see the biggest personality-driven brands utilizing email to book quality sales calls with very sophisticated kinds of people. Like, if you take like Dan Martell, he's selling to SaaS founders. They get I know the people on his team, they heavily utilize email marketing. They've doubled down on it. And then really email is a follow-up mechanism. That's really what it is. And you'll have like three kinds of buyers. You have the automatic, like they just buy right away, and like that's usually what you get profitable with ads, is like you get profitable on those. Then you have the frequency, where they just need to hear and see from you more. And then you have time based, where like they just have to, like, you just need a certain amount of time. You want to like condense that to be as short as possible. But email is a follow-up mechanism, and typically people don't like reading emails, but it's often because they're not treating it really properly. They're not really, like, there's a lot of personality driven brands that are sending very templated style emails that lack personality, that really aren't speaking in the voice of the personality behind it. And they're not really getting anything from it, or they're often just like, it's always like push and push and push, where, like people always like, you can't get around a human's need for wanting to gain things, to have more security, status, survival, and reproduction. And when you can talk around things where like subconsciously that's what they feel they're gaining, and they're able to, like, you're shining light on their reality that they're like really navigating in the dark. That's why they got into your world in the first place. Well, then it becomes a place where they want to read. Your name sticks out when they actually, when it hits their inbox. And it's a thing where, like, when you get value from somebody, you view them very differently. And there's a lot of people who, like, they treat their lead magnets as just a thing to get the email and then to start sending emails. But you can use email marketing to actually get, and that's where I often come in. It's like, are people actually getting value from the things they're downloading from us? Because if they're getting value from us, then they're going to want to read. Like, that's when you start paying attention to people. It's like, yeah, I gain from this person sharing information with me. I'm going to pay attention to them more. And people who don't, then I say mentally no. And it's very hard to win those people back. Right. So getting that right early on and like keeping it going is why, like, email is a perfect way to do that. And then the other thing with email too is, like, it's a personal place, like you post on Facebook and the Facebook marketing, all that stuff. It's great, but it's one to many. People comment, everyone sees the comments, right? Whereas email, like, it's very private. And you also get emails from like your grandmother there, from your mom, your dad. So like, it can be this place where like you now get put into that kind of world. Like, we use Dan Martell example. Like, Dan Martell's one of those guys with all those, like, he's who I look for in my personal place. It's such a way to build relationships, and relationships are the whole thing with, like, monetizing high ticket offers, right? So
when it gets to getting to sending the emails is one thing, but what are some of the work that you do even before you get to the point that you're sending out emails? What are some of the things that you've got to help clients with, and educating them about email and about that kind of marketing that just makes a big difference for them?
Well, you'll have like there's much different ways to speak to people in general. And, like, and anybody who's a business owner, they know, like, you can market to people and get lots of leads, but they're terrible leads. Or you can also make great leads bad by just speaking to them in the wrong way. So like, often, like, we look at, for example, a market, like I have a lot that's in the legal business, and like they sell to lawyers. You can imagine how on the dot you got to be selling to freaking lawyers, right? You know what I mean? Like, they look at all the specifics, but they look for the specifics, right? So while traditional direct response marketing is like, it can be like, hey, don't give them too much of the how, stay away from that, but you can still talk around the how without giving them the how, just give them the what of the how. So it's a way for them to feel like, yeah, I'm getting the specifics, but they're not really getting like the secret sauce that's in the program, right? Like, there's a way to do that, but you should do that with speaking to some markets. Or like, if you have people who are more analytical, they typically want to follow processes, and they want things laid out in systems. And so often in your marketing and your copywriting, you want to like even structure your products that way. You want to structure your whole marketing message that way. Many people are like that, but you also have people like salespeople. They don't want to follow processes. They often are in sales because they didn't go the usual way. They kind of want to do whatever they want. And many entrepreneurs are like that. And so you want to, that's where they want to discover things and do things on their own. So like, these are like ways that you can then embed into your marketing to speak to them more. And it's like, you're meeting you're meeting what they're looking for without like trying to push them. You're just like, it's not like what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. So like, I have to really talk through these things, because often before we start sending emails, we have to look at like their front end stuff and their ads, and like we have to tweak those first. So then it just improves things down the line. And then often we reveal a lot of things that they just either had biases about their audience that they just didn't realize, or like really like make some big improvements on that, So it's often a lot of that before we even start to just sending emails every week and stuff,
Yeah. So what do you start looking for when it comes to what they have in place? You mentioned you look at ads, you look at audience and things like that. Like, what are some of the other things that you look at that instead of just saying, "Hey, now we're going to write an email for you," what are some of the things that you kind of dig deep in and chip away or add to what they're already doing that makes when that you start sending the emails, it makes it way more effective to reach their audience?
Well, I look at the ads because I got to know like what they're responding to, right? Because often if you can logically keep with what they're responding to, like that's the response is there. They took an action, right? So I look at that. And I also I go back to where I started. So it was like, if I want to know who I'm going to be getting on to, like when I was in sales, when I wanted to know who I'm going to be speaking to, I would just watch a lot of sales calls, and I do the same thing now. And I look for who's on the phone. And then I will often see, like I have a client who's in the mental health space, and they help people with like burnout and anxiety, depression. But there are many people who suffer with that, and they suffer with it in different ways. There's some people who suffer from anxiety, like very debilitating. And there's others who like, they have anxiety because they push themselves too much and like they people please and all this, right? But they want it to be more like they want to actually help more of the people who push themselves because they're more action takers. They typically are more financially off as well. They're typically working. Much easier to sell to and build a business around. But they were having a lot of people who are just like completely down in the dumps, like completely just like they're anxious in a way that they can't even leave the house. But and it was like, why are we getting these? And but when we look at the video ad scripts, it's like, that's who you're speaking to. You are literally saying you're speaking right to that person. And then oftentimes they don't understand that. They just think like, yeah, well, we'll just like they think they're casting a wide net when they're really like harpooning for the wrong fish, right?
Wow.
So those are, but you often only find that when you actually look on the call. But then the thing comes, when you look at the sales calls, you got to kind of know what you're looking for too, because they were watching the calls and they were reviewing them. It's like, are we just not closing them properly? Like, or like what's wrong, right? But like often the problem's way upstream, and then we would discover that as we work together, So
you had mentioned, the word avatar, and for some people, that might be a new phrase to them. How do you, like you said, they were reaching an audience that they didn't think they were reaching, or they thought they were throwing a wide net. How do you start refining and making sure it's reaching the right people, the right avatar?
It's based on, but they often will have a similar outcome that they want, but they'll have a different problem in the way. Oftentimes they will have the same problem in the way, but a different perceived problem that's in the way. And so you can start to splice it based on that. And that often comes with how like mentally sophisticated they are with what they know about your offer. So for example, I have a legal client, and like, there's some people who are doing the kind of like the legal services that we target. Some people who are already doing it, they have very different problems who want to start doing the kind of legal services we teach to build a business around. Some people don't even feel it's possible. Some people know it's possible, but they're lacking something else, like technically, right? Like from a technical standpoint. So it often comes with like, okay, do they have like, what's the outcome that they want? Which is typically an emotional feeling, really. And then the second thing is like how much do they know about the offer? Because then or like how much they know about what we do, and that often ties back into what their perceived problem is or what their real problem is. And then that changes just how you'll speak to them in whatever you are doing,
Right. And so, once you've kind of understood the problem that your audience is facing, the one that they feel, the one that they wrestle with, the one that gives them concern, the one that keeps them up at night, what's the process, once you've gotten that, before you send that email, that first email out, are there any other things that somebody needs to have in place for the email to be even more effective?
It's a good question. Well, I would say that like when I write like say daily emails, like we're all on lots of email lists, getting lots of emails from everybody, right? They're all there. When I write emails, like I look at like even what front end products do they have, and what back end products do they have. And so when I'm writing emails, yeah, we're sending out to the broadcast list, just the list that's hanging out there. But often I'll look at like, I know this is kind of off from what you would ask, but like I would look at like, okay, so what's say they have a front end product or a lead magnet, whatever, to solve an initial problem. Well, what's the next problem that comes up once they solve that problem? Because that typically leads into their back end problem. Because right, problems just lead to more offers, and offers just lead to more problems, right? So I'll look at that. And so that, like, my whole thing is like, we're never just writing daily emails. Like, this is something we send out once, never send it again. I'm more looking like, okay, we'll write this now, send it, and it's going to be relevant for who we're sending it to, but how can we also write it in a way where like it can get forever use, So I'll do that.
Okay.
And the reason why I do that is because typically it's great if somebody does have, different entry points. They already have an offer that there's proven to work, because email is not going to make an offer work. Like, it's not going to get the fire started. It's just going to pour gas on that fire. So typically they should have, like, they should already be winning, should already be profitable with front end advertising. And then it's typically like, yeah, like, you're in a good spot to like have email like be a layer of profitability without increasing so much of your bottom line,
Talk a little bit more about the problem leading to a new problem.
So like, it's often like, okay, like, so if you have if it could be like, I think a perfect example is like, okay, you get a workout program, but now, and that solves a problem. But now you maybe have a problem with motivation, right? Or you have a problem with accountability. And that's where a personal trainer, like higher ticket thing, comes in, right? Like, you solve a problem. I don't know what to do. You're not even going to think about a trainer until you have, say like the workout program and nutrition. And so often, and that's the best way to do it. There's a lot of people, and people listening, or they maybe have seen, or yourself have seen, like, they try to like split offers up by like, okay, we'll give them a little bit to fix the problem. They'll pay for that, but to get the next part, they got to pay again and pay again and pay again. And it's just this, and it doesn't really, you get people that are very resentful, because it's like, I got to keep paying just to solve the thing I initially thought I was paying to solve for. But it makes much more sense just to have it organically, where like a problem gets solved, and then like, when problem gets solved, new problem comes up like right away. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I love that, because it's the idea that I am only going to solve a part of your problem. I've gotten your attention. I've pulled you into what I'm doing, and I'm only going to solve a smidgen of what you actually need solved. And then, you've got to pay to get more. And then, even then the problem's still not solved. And then you've got to pay a little bit more. And then the problem's still not solved. And that starts, creating this issue of trust in you as a solution provider, because it's like, well, I keep going back to them, but it's never fixed. It's never solved. They keep, trying to whet my appetite with more and more, but I'm never satisfied. But what you were talking about is, you solve that problem, but sometimes when you solve that problem, then suddenly new problems arise. And if you know your industry, if you know what you're doing, if you know the problems that you solve, and you're very familiar with it, then you know what those one solution, what that opens up a door to suddenly, right? And so that makes a difference, is even finding out what those are. Is that what you help people with, or is that something that they usually have in place when you come on board to help them with some of their marketing?
I mean, I've learned that from the best marketers in the world, and outside of them, it's like, when I share that, it's like a completely foreign concept, right? And so typically when I share that, like, it's then we rework things, and typically it's a new concept that they don't accept it right away. It's like, we'll just keep doing what we're doing because it's too new to accept, right? But then they start to see over time, it's like, like this there's a better way to do this that's much more organic. And so like it's typically something where like I'm looking for it, and that's what I've really tried to lean into, because there's a lot of people who will do your email marketing, they will, but there's not a lot of people who will think on that level for your business, aside from the emails, and really give a crap as much for that, but it's something I can't pull myself back from, like, what am I going to do? Ignore something I see that's like, causing a leak? I can't do that. Right. So.
Yeah. I think just that simple thing, I think for somebody, that's a head smack moment right there, is, really digging down into your business and looking at how you can give small wins to the people that you want to help, and a complete win. They get the trophy, they get the medal, they've won, they've accomplished something, they've succeeded in something that they've come to you initially for. And then looking at your business and saying, well, now that I've solved that problem, what other problems are now arriving? or what are the needs? Maybe not a problem. Maybe the initial thing is solving a problem, but then what other needs arise once they're in that place of feeling better, solving that initial need that they might have, whether it's around their health or their business or whatever it is, and then looking at, well, what opportunities maybe even does that open up for me to serve them even greater, even better, even stronger, to get them even to the next level that they might not have even realized that there is, or that they need solved. And so, as a business owner, I think that's a challenge, is to look at things a little deeper and understand that the problem you solve might be just a small part of the services you can actually offer that actually helps people out, right? And so I think that's a big revelation for somebody that have never thought about their business that way. They think, I solve one problem, done, move on to solve the next same exact problem for somebody else. But there is this stacking of problems that sometimes happens with different industries. And so when, you mentioned the law firm, what are some other areas where you've seen this problem stacking and serving people that has made a big difference in your marketing and reaching out to customers and making a difference in their lives?
I have a client that's also in the sales space, right? And that's one of my favorites because it's my world. I'm speaking to one of me, right? And that's like the audience will often feel like I have a sales problem. Like that's what they know, right? But what they're aware of subconsciously, even though if they can't even say what their problem is oftentimes, but they subconsciously know logically, is like there's a chain in that, right? And often what I've seen, even in just with other, say, like sales centric offers, is like they'll like, this is sales training, right? And you're going to buy sales training. It's got thousands of dollars, and it's very hard to bring them to like actually to get them to accept it. But then, like, for some of the offers that we'll do, it's like we'll split it up so that, like, okay, the first thing they actually buy, let's say it's a low ticket product, is like you're going to learn to ask better questions, because they can often see, like, I can't even get towards getting somebody close to accepting a product or service. If I don't have the questions to ask, if I don't know how to ask them, right?
Right.
Then when that's solved, it's like, okay, now you know how to ask better questions, but where do they go on your script? You know how to organize these properly. It's a very logical thing. And then that can be the next problem that they come to. And from there, it's like, okay, yeah, now I've organized this. I don't know how to handle objections, or I don't know how to actually like stack the how to actually like explain the offer I'm selling, right? And so like then you can split it up. So now like you have like these very different, obviously problems, and you can splice these up so that they're the first thing that either people buy, or they're the first, or they're in the sequence of a chain. But I find that's much better, because usually there would be a lot of businesses that just loop everything. It's like, yeah, this is our high ticket offer, and we're going to help you with everything, right? But it's very hard to accept that. And then they often don't know you, right? So then trying to get that is also very hard. If they get value from like a low ticket product that they've gone to, it's like, what, $27. We all see those $27 products. Very easy to accept. They actually get value from it. They're very likely to say, even take like the next $100 product. Very more likely they're going to get on a call if they got value from that, and very more likely they're going to want to get the big thing that you actually make profitability on the back end, right? So
right. Yeah, because you've established this trust. You've established that you can solve the problem that they came in initially with, whether that is low ticket or whatever that might be. And then they're like, okay, well, what's next? What's more? I feel better if it's something to do with health, or my business, I've seen change. I'm getting more calls. I'm getting more leads. What's next? What else do you offer to help me? With that. And that's, a growing in what you offer, but also in the problem solving is, I have solved this problem now. Do you help with this new problem that's arisen? And because they trust you in what you've initially done, it's like, okay, now that I've got these leads, how do you help me in conversations? How do you help me in, things like that? And so I absolutely love that. Love that process.
Thing too is, the thing with that too, right, is like every business owner wants recurring revenue, right? Like that's the whole thing. That's why SaaS businesses are so like valued at such a high level, is because it never ends, right? Like it's just high recurring revenue, and it's such an automated thing. But the thing is recurring revenue. But when you only have recurring revenues when you have recurring problems, right? So if you can and then that's where like that's when recurring revenue will become possible, because there's so many times like I'll work with a new offer. Originally, like, I want to help with email, and I'll see like, yeah, you have a high ticket offer, you're selling to it, but they're not going, like, once they are done, you're spending so much to get this customer, and
Right.
then you work, then they pay you like say $5,000-$7,000, and then that's it, right? But like,
Right.
they have new problems now, right? But you're not thinking about those new problems, and so like, that can be, it can just open up so much more on the back end, where like now, like, yeah, you paid so much to get this customer and you made a certain amount of profit on that. It doesn't have to end, right? It doesn't have
Right.
to, right? And so a
Right.
lot of people don't realize that, but you can create this kind of ecosystem, regardless if you have a SaaS product or not. If like your audience has recurring problems, they have other problems. Like if you just put out offers and make them strategically, it just makes a whole difference in the back end, which is really where you make all your profit. And it can make the biggest difference, because every business owner is trying to like obviously make more and improve their margins. And they often like turn to like, yeah, how can we get more leads and improve the front end, right? And like just do it. But there's so much on the back end that they're missing.
Right.
Right. So,
Right. Well, then I think that's where the email marketing makes a big difference. Is you can put that stuff back in front of people, and that when they realize that, okay, now that I've solved this problem, I've realized that suddenly this world of additional needs have arisen. So sending out an email is, and so that's some of the back end understanding of scaling and stacking offers. But even before that, there's probably things that, you mentioned the avatar is getting clear on your avatar and your audience, who you're trying to reach. What are some other things that, when it comes to marketing, what sometimes people fail at is they get attention, but that attention doesn't have a proper path towards getting them the right solution? What are some of the other things you look for? Because, you do the emails, you're brilliant at that. You get the attention, but there's probably some things that you say, if you don't have this in place, like I can get people attention. And then once you have their attention, you're losing them because this thing is not right. It's kind of like I've said to others, it's like you're in a stadium and you scream, "Hey, look at me." And everybody looks at you, and then you're like, no, okay. Now that I've got your attention, that's all I've got. I just got your attention. So what are some of the things that you make sure are in place that when you help somebody get attention, that they're not losing that attention because they've failed in other areas?
Well, like most, even just with, we talked about email, like most email lists, what they do is like, it's the most common case is like, people are opting in and they are going on to a list where they're receiving whatever the heck we're sending that week, right? If I'm talking about a story about my dog and how that relates to B2B sales or something, some wild angle that people try to pull out of their hat, right? Like usually that's what they're seeing, right? But that's often not what, like if they just opted in, they responded to something, whatever we're sending that week, and what they're like, what's top of mind for them and their awareness, desire level around the problem, pain, it's often not in synchronized, right? And so often that's where like email sequences really crush, and that's what a big focus of mine is, because like you set them up once, that's such a key area where they're immediately responding, the iron's hot. Like we keep turning it up when sequences are done right, and then I say done right because those have to be in place, but oftentimes an email sequence will be like, okay, somebody opts in and it's like, hey, get this thing, and then next day, pitch, 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 pitch. And it's like it's like it says over and over, and it's like a much better way, because like some people will even just start dropping off, and you can structure based on their behavior. If they're not opening like the first 7 emails in that sequence, you can pop them into another one that's literally meant to get them to reply, right? Once they're replying and they're aware, put them back into something else to get them through that, right? But then even structuring it too, so that you build the know, like, and trust in the right way. You build familiarity, because a lot of these personality-driven brands too, they are very disconnected from their audience, and they don't even realize, like, they could be a millionaire, but they're helping people get to their first like 6 figures, but they can be talking way out of line with that. And so bringing them back down, because it's very hard to bring people up to their level, but it's very easy to bring yourself down and build a ton of relatability with that. And so there's a lot of opportunity with that too. And that's a big thing, is like that's where like, you talk about getting attention and like keeping that attention, like that's where like a big focus will go. And then the other thing too is just making sure they're actually getting value from the thing that would they either bought or downloaded. And that's the thing that people always skip over. It's like, yeah, like let's just market to them, right? But like your marketing should be useful, and your whatever they downloaded or bought is part of your marketing. Like it should be useful. They should get value from it, and like that will make the world of a difference. Even with the people, like for myself, like I get mentors all the time, and I buy things that from them initially, and like the ones I pay attention to and think about right now are the people that have helped me and I've gotten value from, right?
Right.
So people make marketing very very convoluted, like, oh, how do you do it? But like it really comes down to these fundamental basic things. Like, am I gaining things that are gonna like help me in the future, right? Like, do I feel better, right? Do I feel like I'm navigating my path more, right? It's these really basic things,
Right. Now, you had mentioned a few ways that you've gotten onto an email list. What are some of the most effective ways you've seen that you can grow that list? Because obviously that you can buy lists and things like that, and those aren't of a whole lot of value. At least I don't think they are. What are some of the ways that if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm seeing the value of solution stacking, I'm seeing the value of sending out emails. What are some of the ways that you can actually grow that list that you've seen the most effective tools are?
There's like two paths, and like neither are wrong, but you're gonna get two different outcomes. Like one is just like building a list, like with opt-ins and stuff, right? Free download, right? But there's a whole other world with like building a bit, like that's a list of subscribers and prospects, but there's another world of building a list of buyers, right? Like credit cards, like literally, like they bought something, right? That's a very different list. You'll find like one subscriber is like 1,000 subscribers is as valuable as like one buyer, because people who buy, they make decisions, right? And that's what's valuable. So I think that you should have a mix of both. And then, because then like free opt-ins can lead into like low ticket products. You could even easily do that. But I would say like everybody should have like a low ticket funnel product that they have, because it just makes a world of a difference. Because like, yeah, you can funnel people into that. It's a very easy way for them to like get into your world and get value from you. But you're not like building a list of like tire kickers and freeloaders. Like, you are getting people who are like literally buying decisions, and they have new problems coming up, right? So I'll dive into that too. Like when I work with a client, like that might be something too that we do as a project. And typically we make a lot of progress just by like monetizing their existing list of like subscribers. But then I always say like, yeah, like we should look into like a low ticket funnel product here, because it's a whole nother avenue that you're leaving off the table here.
Yeah. So when it comes to the free opt-in and then the small low ticket offer, I want to talk about both of those a little deeper as far as effectiveness and what kind of things, for somebody this might be new to them, they might be just hearing this. What would be an opt-in? What would be an example of an effective opt-in? Is it just, hey, subscribe to my newsletter, or is there other things that are more effective when it comes to that?
I would say it could be. I know a lot of people do like newsletter style, like it's literally just, hey, like this is my newsletter. But they typically get away with that once like they've established themselves as almost like a kingpin, like people know them, they want to hear from them, they're known for their expertise. Oftentimes, like a lot of people don't have that yet. Like they have it in some degree with people who know them, but there's a lot of people who don't, right? So that's where like you can do opt-ins based off, like it's almost like it would be a low ticket product really, but you're giving it for free it's just much easier to say yes to, right? Because you wouldn't need as much like front end sales pages, funnel copy to do that. Like it's free, right? Like they can just get it. So it's just another way for them to get it. But it's almost like taking like a low ticket product, making it free. And that's often something we do too. Like I see somebody has a great lead magnet that they're giving away for free. It's like, we could turn this into like a low ticket funnel, right? They're getting results from this. Like we could make something happen with this too, So
now, are you talking like a free download of like a PDF or like what is this low ticket freebie that works best?
Could be a PDF, could be a book, right? Could be a book, could be like a short course. It could even be just like even one video training, right? It could be even like a masterclass that somebody has done, or a webinar that if there was a pitch at the end, sure, but they could have been something that people got a lot of value from just because they gave a lot of expertise. We could package that into like say like a free download, right? So it could be anything where like somebody gained something relevant to the problem that they're aware of, right? And that's where like knowing your audience, like what's really the problem, right? Because going back to the sales thing, right? Like we're going to talk about a lot about objections, but if the big thing that people respond to with us is like question asking, right? Then maybe we should make like an opt-in based on that, right?
Yeah. And so it solves a problem. It's not just fluff, like it solves a real problem. I'm guessing that's probably the most effective freebie, is that you're not solving a part of a problem. You're solving a real problem that then is part of that offer stack, right? Of, I've solved this problem, but that's now opened up a whole world of other things. And sometimes solving that problem is teaching them the why they need to solve the problem and making them aware of it, and then you sell them the how, right? That's where you come in and say, well, you can't do it yourself. I know you're aware of it now, and I've helped educate you around this problem that you're wrestling with. And, I offer the how, and I can come alongside you and solve this better. Is that some of the most effective stuff you've seen, or is there things that have worked even better than that?
What really works, I think what works really well, and it's not relevant for all offers, but like, I mean, if you can give people like even like the intel, right? The how to a lot of times, but they still need help implementing it. Right. Like there's so many times, and it's very funny because like there will be a lot of people who like their courses have been leaked and pirated. Right? Their programs, like literally some guy in like India is selling them for $25, right? Like they were doing that, but then you will still see, I would see this, people would still like, they would buy that, right, for $25. Now they got the info. They would still go buy the high ticket thing because they need help implementing. And so then you start to see like how it starts to split up. So like, I think like whatever, like I think information is really good because like they can go through that. It's just a matter of getting them to go through that. But it should be value. It shouldn't be fluff. It shouldn't just be like some like words on a page just said in different ways and just like a bunch of fluff. Like sure, you'll get their opt-in, but you're not going to keep their attention like you were saying before.
Right. It's not going to make any difference or any help. They'll read the whole thing and they're like, I haven't learned a thing from that.
They're just going to mentally say no. And once people mentally say no, like it's very hard to turn that around. That's why like the more no's you can like pre-handle turn into yeses, like it's just all the better, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. And so they've already said no because they feel that you haven't solved the problem, or it was all fluff, or talk a little bit about that.
Well, they even just like, if they don't get like, okay, like they just, I mean, you'll see ads on Facebook, right? You kind of get annoyed by them, right? It's just like, okay, yeah, but then you kind of say like, okay, I should check this out, right? And so you're already kind of like in like a neutral, almost negative place. And then they go through it, and then it's like a bunch of fluff. Like, are you increasing your authority or status in their head? Like you're not, and actually, you've lowered it quite a bit, and you've like completely destroyed trust, right? So like, it's now try to win that back, right?
Right.
Like now, even if that person then one time maybe does get on, because people go through different journeys, right? Like maybe they do end up on a sales team's calendar, right? For your offer, like it just changes changes everything with how they're there, right?
Right. So, the relationship didn't start off on a good foot, so now you've got. And I, I often said that, people think that you measure the effectiveness of marketing from 0 to 10, but it's actually from like -10 to +10, because, you're not starting at 0. You can actually start at negative, and then you've just got to catch up to get to 0, because you've done some stupid stuff like, just giving them free fluff that didn't make any kind of a difference. And so going through the process, and so you get their attention, via a website, right? It doesn't have to be a funnel, or is it a funnel that you need to start them off with?
It can be like, oftentimes they'll come from even like their social presence. If they have a YouTube presence, they'll come from that. But typically they're moving traffic and attention over from like say YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. They're moving it over, right? They're moving that attention. So now it's not like the attention just isn't lost, that it can go anywhere in like the YouTube algorithm. Now you're controlling it with email, where like really the only algorithm really is just hitting the inbox, not hitting the promotion folder or spam, right? So
yeah. They've come to your page. You have some sort of an opt-in, or you have some sort of a low ticket offer. You get their email address. Now they're part of an email sequence that you start sending out. Is that the next step? Or what happens next after you've got that email, after you've got their attention? Is it then creating that sequence of emails, or what happens? What happens in the process?
Well, like once we do that, I like to look at like, okay, this is what they're getting. What's like one more thing that directly relates to this that we could give them right away after we've given them something? So now they didn't just get what they asked for. They got what they asked for sure. But that's just like you just did what you said. Like, that's not special, right? But now it's special. It's like, okay, now we can, hey, give them something else, right? And typically it's like first email they get that, and like they have to reply to get it. So that makes, now you're getting people replying on autopilot. It's like that just helps your deliverability. So like people make us think about deliverability. Oh yeah, my open rates are low. Like you do this with your sequences, like you're gonna like have amazing deliverability, just not autopilot like all the time. You don't have to worry about it, right? And then they're getting something, right? So that could be like if they downloaded, I don't know, a guide. It's very detailed, but then there's a video of you going over it, right? It's like I don't know, however long, and then they have to reply to get that. Who would like you would just see like people like going bonkers wanting that too, because like now it's like now they don't just know that, now they just don't know, they have the how to, but they also have somebody showing them how to do the how to. Like that relieves much perceived work, right? And we all want to avoid that. Like it just makes it so much easier, ease, speed, less efforts, less brain power, less time spent. Like people say yes to that stuff, and then so I get that, and then typically we structure the rest of the email sequence. So like I like to look at that too, of like how can we beat this stuff even more, right?
Yeah, I love that. And so the after they've already invested their attention in getting something of value that is helping them out, maybe they've already looked at it, maybe they've got it saved to look at, but they've already felt like they've gotten value from you, and the first email they get from you is even more value that you're just offering for them, but that value is attached to a behavior or an action they need to take. It's not just in an email. You send them to something else. And so, when it comes to even with the email sequences that happen, is the goal to then send them to buy something after you've done that sequence? Is it for them to, go to a web page? Is it for them to, like, what are the behaviors that you expect from doing an email sequence that helps you as a business?
Well, like say like somebody's opt-in fresh into your world. Like I like to focus like the first few on like, it's a lot like it kind of feels like it kind of feels like it came with the product. Like it's like kind of accountability, and like that's where I structure a lot of the language of like the copy is like don't let this collect dust in your inbox. Like actually take action on it, right? And like and people like it's surprising how much people really like that. And then from there, the reason people like download something, do anything to get into your world is because they have an unanswered question, right? And it's very funny if those questions were answered permanently, and we would never buy anything else, right? Like, but we keep doing like the first thing you buy, like it's probably not going to be the last thing you buy from them, or from the last, like you're probably going to buy from somebody else too, right? There's a lot of these unanswered questions, right? And so I like to even like structure some of the emails that go out, like literally digging up that question and having them reply to engage with it, which you'll either find a lot of market research, you'll find a lot of sales opportunities that just come up organically, or like just now they're never the same after they reply anyways. Like they've replied and engaged, so like they're just a different subscriber now too. But then I like to just go into like now like after that goes, and then I like to like structure content so like they are gaining something. It's not like go to the VSL page. We will direct traffic towards there for sure to redirect traffic, but the content is like valuable content is like they leave with something. Like they might not have the exact technical how to, but they know the what about the how. Like they know, like they are leaving with something. It feels complete, right? It doesn't feel fluffy or airy, right? Or like, it's like good, right? And so I like that because then it just shines light on their dark reality that they're navigating. That's why they opted in the first place. And then from there, like they typically will go through, and it's really just to nurture. And I really, for the most time, there will be some pitching, but I don't really pitch a lot in sequences. I will here and there, but I like to base, like when pitching emails happen, I like to base it around when people get paid. and typically that's for some different markets. Like if we're targeting like people who are in a 9 to 5, they're going to get paid like mid of the month and around end of the month, around those ballparks. Well,
Yeah.
in between, we're not going to be pitching. We might do like soft CTAs, like, hey, go watch this training. That's very valuable. And there'll be a book a call button on there that you can decide to go wherever you want. But we're not going to be like hard, like going for the throat or anything. We're only going to do that when you're paid on those periods. And then like after we give you value for like 10, 15 days in a row and you like are engaging with it, it's like very different how that's perceived. It's like, yeah, you've kind of earned me to shop around here. You've earned that, right? Like there's so much goodwill built up, right? So when you talk about like, where's it lead? Well, it can lead a lot of places, but like we're talking like where you make most of the money, like high ticket offers. Like that's how I like to do it myself.
Yeah. That makes sense because you don't want to constantly be pitching because you'll quickly be unsubscribed to or ignored and filtered and put into a folder and never looked at again. And so I like that it is more of a nurturing. So, when it comes to people that you can help and people that you can't help, who wrestles with this kind of a process? And maybe they can succeed, but not at the level of maybe somebody else. But who wrestles with this process and who like excels with this process?
I mean, like does well with it, or just doesn't know it's possible.
Yeah, who does well with it, and who is it a little tougher for? That it can still be effective, but it's not as easy as maybe somebody else doing this sequence.
Typically, the more established they are, the better they're going to do with email, because they're just going to be known more, right? So people who have been around longer, like, and they've made a name for themselves more, that's where they'll do really well. So it's like, it's typically people who have like, they've built a list, they've been profitable on the front end. They already have a sales team, right? It's not people who are like scratch at square one. People who are like more earlier, they can do well, but they're just going to have, there's just a lot more. Well, first the awareness, right? Like if they're a lot earlier, people aren't as aware of them. They're not as aware of their offer. And actually they're probably a lot more skeptical because like, who are you? And if you have competitors, well, so what do you have? Like, it's like, so what, like, what's the point of you? Right. So it makes it very, it's a much of a different game. And that's where like, it's more like, I'll just help them on a consulting basis, right? Like, or I'll look at like what they're already doing and fix it from there, rather than like, hey, hire me on like a high retainer to write you emails, when like, it's like, that's not the biggest splash we can make here, right? It would be a disservice to you, even if it would make me more than it would be like just consulting with you, right? So it's typically people who, they've been further along and they've already been, people know them. They have a list, they have a market, they have a lot of attention. That's where we'll do it. They're getting lots of opt-ins. That's where it really works well too. Because you can make money from lists that are static. You can. I have clients who we do that for. Like they have lists of like 7, 8, 9, 10,000. Not a lot by any standards. Sure, more than others.
Yeah.
And they aren't adding to it. But it's definitely not. It's not always. You can't always like consistently. It's very different from like somebody who's getting like 2,000 new people onto their list every month, right? Like you're gonna have more people who are buying right away and automatically than people who are like, if they're not adding any people to your list, right? So. But people who have like static lists too, it's just a different game you have to play and different expectations that have to be made. But it's great to stay in front of your audience, but like if you're not adding to your list too, that's another factor. Like you got to be aware of that, of like how that's going to affect. Like it's a part of your marketing. You're not adding people to your audience,
right?
Like,
right.
You're gonna run it dry and then have to like. And that's where new problems, right? If you're always solving the same problem, you're gonna run dry pretty quickly, right? If you don't have new problems to talk about or solve, right? So it's all these things that matter. It's all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and with some of the things that matter, of course, language matters, and you're a copywriter, and email is words. What are some words that you avoid or counsel people to be careful about using, and what are some words and the way you phrase things that you've seen creates really effective copy?
So the worst word is free. Like, man, free is the worst word. There's so many other ways to say free, like complimentary, no charge, on us, right? You can imply that, but free, right? Like whenever even when there's something for sale that you might have been interested in, now when like free is in your mind, it's like, okay, well, I got this for free. How can I get whatever else you have how can I get it for like as minimal as possible? Just puts these people in this like such like car buying mentality. Like, how can I just rinse you? How can I just really crush your margins here? Right? It really does.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then like there's just words that imply work, right? Like machine. Like if it's like, say like, oh yeah, we'll build an appointment setting machine for your business. Well, like, machine. Okay, well, do I have to maintain this machine? Is this machine gonna break? Right. So it implies
Right, right.
implies like work, but like it depends on the markets that you sell to. But for example, most markets will be like they like things step by step and things, right? Like they want to be shown exactly how, because that takes perceived worry out of their minds. Like, no, I'm going to know exactly what to do, right? So like that kind of language can really work well, and then but also like it has to be readable too. Like oftentimes the challenge is like when you really like reading and writing, like you will have like very like complicated words to explain things, and then oftentimes like I tell my clients all the time, like this looks like it's written at like a third, fifth grade level, but this was the hardest thing to write. Like, see, my first draft is a lot more complicated. It's like there's more abstractions, and so removing those abstractions is like one of the biggest thing, because then that takes them out of consuming, and if they're not consuming, you're not getting anything, right? So it's like it's like that's where you gotta kind of have to look, and then that's where just the writing process, because those things will not come up like you're writing something for the first time. But once you give your brain air to breathe, then you start to see those things, and like it's like, oh yeah, you say this a lot more simple. You condense things. You say more with less. It hits harder, right? So a lot of ways to spin that.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all get into that situation where we write something from a place of expertise and professionalism and understanding, and we think that it totally makes sense to somebody else that might not know about it. But depending on the kind of business you're in, you know, you've got to look at, you know, am I writing in a way that, for me, I understand it and I get it, and I'm using jargon and I'm using terms that are super familiar with me and my professionalism and my expertise and the stuff that I know. But to a potential customer, they don't know those words yet. They don't know that language yet. And so I've got to look at ways of making it feel professional but approachable. And I think that is a good challenge for people to wrestle with that when it comes to copywriting, right?
And then the other side of it too, right, is like you can say things, right, but then you can talk about like the benefits. Like I have a mental health client that's like they help people end their mind chatter, right? But their audience wants that, but it's not what they also really want. They don't want to just end it. Like, and actually that's what the problem we had with them is like they were just talking about like ending mind chatter, and they were literally just talking who just wanted to get out of pain. And they just would do enough work to get out of pain, and then they would, even in the program, they would stop doing the work to get the actual real results that they have to keep going for, right? But then like even with like the world runs on words, so like the more like you just beef up like what you're actually saying, the more your world will change, is what big belief I have. So like, you know, with the people they want to speak to, they don't want to just they want to actually work with. They don't want to just get out of mind chatter. They want to get out of mind chatter so that they can like be a better partner, be more present at work, like be a better leader, and wake up every day with like energy, right? So we would talk to those things more. Like that's the big thing we would talk to, rather than just like, oh yeah, just get out of the mind chatter kind of thing, you know?
Right.
So
well, and I guess that's explaining the why. You know, like yes, you want to get out of the mind chatter, but you know why? Why is that important to you? And understanding that and being able to communicate that, I think, makes the copy more effective, right? And I think that aligns with even everybody else's. You know, they want this problem solved, and in their mind, they're even using language for this particular thing they want solved, but they're coming out with the, well, why is that important to you? Why does that matter? Why is that a frustration right now? Why is that a problem or a pain right now? And getting to that allows you to then grow what you can solve, right?
So it's all people are thinking about. Like people, like when you think about like why people buy, like I've heard this said with a mentor of mine, like a long time ago. It's like when you buy a new car, and I bought one recently. He told me like, did you feel good when you buy it? I was like, yeah, obviously. You feel good when you continue to ride it? Like I was like, yeah, of course. But like, did it come with good feeling? Like, no, it didn't. It didn't come with like under the specifications. It will make you feel good. It didn't come with those feelings. Like you have to you got to get the product or get it, and then like it makes you. It almost gives you permission to like feel with the feelings that were already there, right? And so like when you can speak to like emotional states, like that's where like you're really speaking to what people are like buying like even a physical thing for in the first place. It's how it makes them feel, right? Not just a thing.
Right.
Opens up a whole new world, so.
Well, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I'd like to leave people with a big head smack that maybe I haven't asked you. Maybe I didn't bring up the question. But what is a big head smack that you want to leave people with when it comes to what you do?
I think we've all seen like kind of the diagram. There'll be like 4 guys, and there'll be like 3 of them will be like pushing a cube up a hill, right? And it's like they're like really pushing, and then there'll be others. There'll be this one guy who like shaved all the edges, made it a sphere, and he's pushing it no problem. I think that's like when you can like look at not just your email marketing, but like your ads, your offers, the products you sell, even to who you're selling to, like from a lot of these new lenses, like you're kind of shaving off a little bit each time with every single thing that you do. And the more you do just over time, like you will be like, you're kind of that guy who's like pushing the sphere and having the easiest time. And like, it's kind of like, well, you don't, and often these things are invisible too. It's like, you don't even understand why it's working, but like, it's those invisible things, which is great. Cause then people can't really copy you, because not a lot of people know this kind of stuff. So then your competitors can't copy you, or they might swipe it, but they don't know why it's working. So like when something breaks, they don't know how to fix it. And so I think like the more like, if it has been like eye opening, like the more you can just like have somebody, doesn't have to be me. Like I might not even be available, but there are people, if you look in the right places, who can do this kind of stuff. It's just invaluable, like to put budget into people like this that can like shave those edges off and just have everything like run a lot more efficiently. And it should be easy. If it's not easy, like there's something that you got to shave off something. That's why it's not easy. That's kind of like the way I view it,
Right. That's really good. Well, thank you, Marcus, for being on today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's going to help some people in rethinking what they're doing and making it a little more effective in not only helping those that they want to help, that they're passionate about helping, that they're equipped to help, but also looking at how do I help them even further than maybe I've even thought about before. And instead of it just being a one point of entry and an in and out very quickly, that there's actually ways that you can wrestle with how can I help them even more. And some of that comes from doing email sequences. Some of that comes from just understanding your customers a little better and understanding what they're about and what matters to them. I appreciate you being on, Marcus.
Yeah, likewise. It's been great, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man. And so if people want to be a part of your world, how do they get a hold of you?
Best ways through Facebook. Honestly, just Marcus Camenzuli, if you can spell that last name. But yeah, you'll see a white dog everywhere. You'll see this thing hanging around everywhere. So like you'll see them, and that's the best way. You'll get to know me a lot through there if you want to know like just like who am I? Like everything to find is right there. So
awesome. And I will have a link to your website in the show notes as well. And I appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah, likewise, Paul. Thank you so much.